There's no necessary. You can do the proceeding in English.
The witness, may you state your full names and surname for the record, please?
Christoffel de Klerk.
Do you have any objection in taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you then swear that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Self again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. de Klerk is correct. You have compiled a report pertaining to this matter.
That is correct.
If I may hand up the report, well, you identify that this is your report.
That is correct.
I'll hand it to copy to everybody in my lady room to refer to it during the testimony to make it easier for the court.
Well, then the hands will be in.
Yes.
It will be accepted as exhibit
M.
A.
M.
M.
M for Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. de Klerk, is it correct that you have sat through this trial from day one until today?
That is correct.
You have listened to all the evidence, including the evidence of the state's ballistic expert.
That is correct.
You have also had access to all the ballistic charts handed in by the state in this matter.
That is correct.
You have compiled a report which you has been handed in as Exhibit M. Just to qualify yourself as a ballistic expert, would you place on record what your experience is, please?
100%. If you look at paragraph 1, I was a member of the South African Police Services from 1984, and since 1989 I was a member of the ballistics section of the forensic laboratory, and in 1998 I left the ballistics unit of the forensic laboratory of the SAP. I left with a rank of captain. Paragraph 2, I received the following 3 years internal training that was given by the lab itself, and it's divided into paragraph 2 as the headings. I'm not going to go through all of it. Microscopic identification, internal ballistics, intermediate ballistics, external ballistics, terminal ballistics, and then additional training and certifications. That's paragraph 2.6. I visited the following firearm ammunition manufacturers: Littleton Engineering, Trebellius, Sonke, Swartklip, Musgrave, New Generation Ammunition, Diplo Point, Nobletech, PMP, and Frontier Bullets. My experience in paragraph 3.
You set out in paragraph 3 all your years of experience, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
You have 35 years of appropriate experience.
40 years. Basically 40 years of experience on investigations, experience of crime scenes, as per paragraph 3.1.
3.2, you have 35 years experience application of forensics.
That's
and
correct.
ballistics. The rest of paragraph 3, you set out your experience, is that correct?
That is correct.
And in paragraph 4, you set out diplomas, certificates, and medals of that.
That's correct. I would just like the court to note paragraph 3.12. I'm currently a member of AFTI, which is the Association of Firearms and Tool Markers Examiners, which is located in the USA. I'm also a registered member and a trainer for the UNODC, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, where I supply training relating to crime scene investigation. And that includes the first responder. Then I've also acquired an advanced program in forensic ballistics, that's paragraph 3.14 at UNISA. And the subjects was forensic criminalistics, documentation of crime scene, forensic law, and forensic ballistics. And then in paragraph 4 is my diplomas and certificates. And then in paragraph 5 is the duty tasks, basically what we do. And then in paragraph 6, I explain the documents that I received, and I can supply the court with a full list of the documents, but everything that's currently in front of the court, I had access to.
Right. Before we go on to paragraph 7, you have compiled for the court a presentation which is directly applicable to the issue before this court, and that is whether the firearm in question fired the cartridge case allegedly picked up at the Siroti Castle Stadium.
That is correct. That is correct.
I think proceed with your... This representation is available. You can hand it to the court in any type of format. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. If you would like to proceed.
The first slide that we're going to have is a slide of the firearm, CQA, same make and model. This is now a different one. It's not the one that was examined or made positive, but the similar one. It's just to show the court what. Now I'm going to explain all the parts of this firearm. First we'll have the flash hinder, that's right in the front. We'll have the barrel, and we'll see that the barrel is extended right up to the point. I'll show you now, front side. Your bayonet lugs, front swivel. When you're dealing with the handguard, now your barrel is extended to the right. So it's from the front right to the back. And if I can just show the court, the firearm is split into two. You get an upper and lower. If I talk about the upper, I'm talking about the top part of the firearm. If I talk about the lower, it will be the lower part. There's your detachable carry handle. Then we have a charging handle. We've got a position stock. This can move in and out. Cannot flip. It's only horizontal, if you can call it that. Then we've got your telescopic latch. Here we've got a buffer tube with a buffer and spring on the inside. It's the internal part. Then we have the rear swivel, pistol grip, trigger, safety lever. That's the magazine port where the magazine fits in. And then we have the carrier bolt release. In other words, if the bolt is at the rear, when there's no more ammunition in the magazine, that is to release the bolt that it can go forward again.
So let's just see, this firearm will fire when you press the trigger. It will fire all the bullets until there's no bullets left in the magazine. At that stage, the bolt will stop.
At the back, that's correct.
Leaving
That is correct.
the mouth open.
Yes, it will leave the bolt carrier and will actually be in the rear position that you can see inside of the firearm. And then we've got the carrier bolt release, that's what I'm talking. Now I turn the firearm around so I can show the difference.
For a second, I'm just adding the last 2 words. Just a minute, thank you. I assume it's not part of the report.
Yeah, so the court
just
can
give me 1
understand where
second to record all the words. I'm nearly done.
Yes, 100%. I can make a copy for the court. It shouldn't be a problem. Then we turn the firearm around. So we're going to do the other side. What we've got here is the buffer tube. Now you'll see that the butt is extended, it's pulled out. It's just to show you that the way it works.
Is that telescopic pipe? Is that what it's called?
That's correct,
In other
yes.
words, it stretches in and out, it doesn't fold
That's correct.
like an AK for itself.
Then we've got the safety lever again. Got it on the left and right. Then we have a forward assist. That is, as soon as you charge the firearm, you put a cartridge in the chamber and it doesn't want to close, then you can use this as a forward assist to actually close the bolt. Then we are dealing with a deflector. We're dealing with an ejection port. The magazine release button. So if you want the magazine to fall out, this is the button that you will push. Then we're talking about the dust cover. And I made an enlargement of the dust cover to show the court what it looks like. And if the court will note, there's the deflector. That's your ejection port. And you can actually see the rotating bolt on the left-hand side. And this is just a small little flap that you can close it to keep it clean. So I've taken closer photographs. This is just to show also the CQA and Orinco CQA with the serial number. And what the court needs to notice is the rotating bolt. And then we've got the dust cover, close up. That is the extractor. The extractor is used, goes around the cartridge. Once it's fired, it actually hooks it and pulls it out. Then we're talking about the ejector. Then we've got the firing pin hole with a firing pin on the inside. You cannot see the firing pin. I've got a video a little bit later which will explain all of these parts, how they work together. Then we have the breech face. And that's on the bolt. Now the bolt is within the bolt carrier.
No, just even at this stage, just to clarify, you were showing all these separate parts. Is it correct that these parts all in part mark onto a cartridge?
That is correct. I'll deal with all of them separately, which I have included in my report as well. Okay, I've got the video. The video is going to play. I don't know what the volume is going to be, but
Pressing magazine release frees the magazine from the lower receiver. Rounds are loaded and held under high force of the magazine spring. It's then inserted into the magwell and secured by the magazine catch. Pulling and releasing the charging chambers the first round. The charging handle forces the bolt carrier group to the rear. As it jumps back, the action spring is compressed. As the carrier returns forward, the bolt strips the top cartridge from the magazine and guides it into the chamber. Housed within the bolt carrier is the bolt. The bolt contains several locking lugs that engage with the barrel extension lugs. As it makes contact with the barrel breech face, the bolt turns and locks into place. The locking function is due to the cam pin housed within the bolt. The pin rides along a track in the bolt carrier, allowing it to rotate. When the bolt is open, it's locked in the forward position and can only rotate once the cam pin has cleared the recess in the upper receiver. With the selector taken off the safe position, the AR-15 is ready to fire. A recess cut into the selector permits trigger movement. As the trigger is pulled, the hammer is released from the sear. The hammer spring drives the hammer forward to strike the firing pin, causing it to travel forward and impact the cartridge primer. Within the primer is the ignition compound and an angle. As the firing pin strikes the primer, a spark is created, igniting the propellant inside the cartridge. The expanding gases propel the bullet down the barrel, where rifling grooves impart stabilizing spin on the bullet. The gases escape through a small port in the barrel, through the gas tube, and into the bolt carrier key, forcing it to the rear. The extractor grips the rim of the spent cartridge case and holds it against the bolt face until the ejector forces it through the ejection port, striking the deflector as it exits. As the bolt carrier comes back, it returns the hammer to its cocked position and stays held back by the disconnector. When the buffer reaches the back of the receiver extension, the action spring returns the bolt carrier forward. As it returns, the bolt strips a new cartridge from the magazine and directs it into the chamber. Simultaneously, the extractor clips into the rim of the new cartridge. Many ARs are equipped with an adjustable stock. The stock rides along the receiver extension, commonly referred to as the buffer tube. Pressing the release lever, moving it to the desired position, and releasing it will lock it in place. The ejection port cover can be closed when the rifle is not in use to protect the inner parts from outside elements. The cover opens automatically when the rifle is fired.
This video was downloaded from the internet. The video is much longer and explains everything inside the firearm. And I've just taken out the most important parts of the video.
You've identified numerous parts on the firearm. I see, sorry, carry on.
Okay. Now, if you look at the differences, you'll see that the cartridge case that was linked with the firearm, with the serial, the one that's in front of the court, was a 223 Remington. The firearm is marked on the side as 5.56 millimeters. And this is just to explain that there's tiny little differences between the two. If you go look at the specifications, you get two specifications to adhere to in South Africa. It's currently called the CIP specifications. I've written it down at the bottom. And the SAMI specifications. SAMI is normally used in your European countries where your CIP spec is more related to your USA. Now I've taken the liberty of a 223 on the left-hand side and a 5.56 by 45. It's exactly the same caliber, especially if you look on the size of the cartridge, of the bullet at the top. But there are differences between them. If you go look at your 223, you'll find that there's tiny difference, and we're talking about 0.005 of an inch tolerances we're working in. It's very tiny. There is differences between the two, and you will find that most of these differences are on the neck or close to the neck. You will also find that your 5.56 are mainly manufactured for your security companies or law enforcement. It's loaded a little bit, the loads are more. In other words, because we're dealing with uninterrupted fire, they need a little bit stronger ammunition. So the powder or the loads will be different. The 223 will be lighter. There's a two. Now if we go look at, we need to distinguish on tool mark comparison, the methodology. How are we using this? Now, the methodology of tool mark comparison is the following, and this came from AFTI, that's their training manuals. All parts of a firearm are manufactured by the use of different tools. So if we take the firearm, we take an example, the extractor or the ejector, there's different tools manufacturing that tool or the extractor. Once I use the firearm, that extractor becomes a tool on the cartridge. That's how you've got to relate to. Each tool used will have its own distinct markings, striations, damages, etc., which are expected to be transferred. So all of these parts will transfer. In most of the cases, depending on the ammunition that you use, will be transferred to the cartridge case or the fired bullet. These marks from the tool will transfer to a second object into class characteristics, subclass characteristics, and individual characteristics. And I'll explain all of these, exactly what it means. Now, the tool that's used, the first tool, changes over time, the imperfections in wear and tear while they're using the tool. Now, the lifespan of the tool will determine the uniqueness. So the older the tool becomes, the more unique it will get. When the tool is used, one needs to keep in mind today's technology and advances on tool consistency and composition of each tool. If we look at Norinco, which is a Chinese-based company, they will definitely use the broach or the mandrel that they use, and then I'll explain a little bit later what the mandrel is. If they use that tool, it's not going to just produce one firearm or 10 firearms. They could probably make thousands of firearms with that one tool. Then we need to identify the tool marks. We're dealing with tool mark identification. Sorry. Can you see that? Is there? Tool mark identification is a discipline of forensic science which has its primary concern to determine if a tool was produced by a particular tool, which is divided into two main groups. The first one is the impressed mark. In other words, if I take a hammer and I hit it on the table, that will be an impressed mark. The mark produced when a tool is placed against an object and enough pressure is applied so that the tool leaves an impression in the object. The class characteristics, example, shape, size, orientation, can suggest the type of tool used to produce the mark. The individual characteristics can be used to identify the tool with the mark. Then we're talking about striated or striations. This is where it's basically scraping marks. Marks produced when a tool is placed against another one, and the pressure is applied and the tool moves across the object, producing a striated mark. Friction mark, abrasion marks, and scratch marks are terms commonly used when referring to striation marks. These marks can be either class or individual characteristics. Now we're going to work with definitions, and I'm going to define class characteristics. This is according to AFTI. Class characteristic is measurable features of a specimen which indicated the restricted group source. They result from design factors and therefore determined prior to the manufacture. For example, the groove diameter, the size and the shape of the firing pin. So these are class characteristics already determined. If we look at the bolt, the class characteristics on that bolt example will be that if the extractor is at 9 o'clock, you will find the ejector at 3 o'clock. That's class characteristics. Now we're dealing with subclass characteristics. Now subclass is discernible surface features of an object which are more restrictive than class characteristics, in that they are produced incidentally to manufacture. It's toevallig to make. Are significant that they relate to a smaller group source, a subset of the class to which they belong, and can arise from a source which changes over time. That's subclass characteristics. Then we're dealing with individual characteristics. Individual characteristics is marks produced by a random imperfection or irregularity of the tool surfaces. Sorry. These random imperfections or irregularities are produced incidental to manufacture and caused by use, corrosion, damage. They are unique to that tool and distinguish it from any other tool.
So in other words, if a firearm has got these individual characteristics, it's implanted onto a cartridge case, one can then say that, subject to what is to follow, that firearm, these marks are unique to that firearm.
That's correct, of that tool.
That
tool. The firearm is made up of a lot of different tools. So you can identify one tool. Now, what did the expert or the examiner use? They use a comparison microscope. And this is just an example of one. And I'm going to go through it. You've got a camera at the top, you've got your ocular lenses where you look in. Then you've got your comparison bridge, which divides the comparison microscope into two. And you have on the left, you have an objective stave, and I've actually brought an example for the court, that the court can see what it looks like. This is now this part. If I look on the it's that part. And this is what it looks like. So in other words, when you use it, you'll have your cartridge there, and it can turn up and down. It can swivel. So you can if you place the cartridge here, you can actually view the cartridge anywhere without taking it off. You don't need to take it off. And then also what needs to be noted is that it's marked. It's got measurements on it. So in other words, once you set up your cartridge, you will have orientation of it. Right? So you'll have example. You'll have your extractor or ejector at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever. By the test and your exhibit will be the same. So if you find a unique mark somewhere else, you know if you look at that at 30 degrees, you should be able to see the same mark.
Let's just stop there because it needs clarification. You're looking through the top.
Yeah.
On the left-hand side is what?
Is normally your exhibit.
So the exhibit picked up, say, at the stadium.
That's correct.
On the right-hand side would be a test cartridge case that you fired from the same firearm you suspect to have fired the one on the left.
That is correct. Yes.
Now looking through the top, you can see both of them.
Yeah, I've got an example here on the right. You basically see a circle, you'll see a dividing line, and you'll see the exhibit on the right and the test on the right. If you look at the dots, I think it's exhibit A, you can see the thin dividing line in the center. This is how it works. What the court needs to understand is that there's light sources. Each one of them got its own light. So you can change the light up and down, left and right. So the shadows and valleys that you can see it through the microscope. Now if you look at there's 3 enlargements or 3 different microscopes. So in effect, we've got 6 microscopes built into one.
Okay.
Then I've done comparison marks. These are all marks that can be found on a cartridge case. It's not in all the cases. It can be that some of the marks are missing. It's possible. Now I'm going to deal with all of them. We're first dealing with the firing pin mark. That's in the center. If you look at the cartridge there on the left-hand side, you can actually see the little divot. And that is produced by the firing pin that's inside there. Then we're dealing with your breech face. Breech face is marks are normally situated here. There you can also see some breech face marks. On the side. Now here at the bottom, I've got a barrel that has been cut open. And on the right, you can actually see the chamber. And the chamber starts right from the front, right to the back. So any mark found in that area on the side of the cartridge can be defined as chamber marks. But because it's neck chamber marks, just gives us a better indication where the mark was found. So neck chamber marks. And we're dealing with magazine lip marks. Firearm picks up the cartridge, can find magazine lip marks. Then we need ejection port marks or deflector marks. As the cartridge is being thrown out of the firearm, it hits to the side. Then we're dealing with feeding ramp marks. As it's fed into the chamber or the barrel of the firearm, normally we can find marks there as well. We're looking at neck marks. And then we're dealing with leg groove marks.
Again, these are all marks that one could find on a cartridge case, which has been fired in a specific fire.
That is correct. Normally you will find a combination. Sometimes, depending on the pressure on the inside of the cartridge, some of these marks will not transfer. Sometimes that happens. Now I'm going to do a range of conclusion results and findings currently used by the ballistics unit: positive, undetermined, and negative. Now, this is significant agreement of marks. That's why they make it positive. Undetermined is basically is not sufficient marks, and no agreement is negative. Now, AFTI range of conclusions is the following. Based on the AFTI theory of identification, same source identification, there are 4 categories of examining the outcome, range, and conclusion possible when comparing 2 marks, typically used by firearm examiner in the microscopic comparison of fired cartridge cases and shotgun shells cases. These categories are divided up into the following. I will explain each one of them. Identification, same as positive. Inconclusive, same as undetermined. And elimination is negative. You eliminated it. And then there's a 4th one, which they use as unsuitable for comparison. The lab will normally use undetermined, and then explain that it's damaged to an extent that they can't find any marks. Now we're dealing with identification of positive. Now, the AFTI glossary defines identification as follows: is agreement of combination of individual characteristics and all discernible class characteristics where the extent of agreement exceeds that which can occur in the comparison of 2 marks made by different tools, and is consistent with the agreement demonstrating marks known to have been produced by the same tool. The statement reflects the concept of significant agreement and best known non-matches. All identifications are based on pattern matching. It is possible to go beyond the qualitative match to the quantifiable consecutive matching. Then we're dealing with inconclusive. An inconclusive result is noted as the outcome of a comparison in which there is some agreement of individual characteristics and all discernible class characteristics, but insufficient for identification. Agreement of discernible class characteristics without agreement or disagreement of individual characteristics due to the absence of insufficient or lack of reproducibility. Agreement of a discernible class characteristic and disagreement of individual characteristics, but insufficient for elimination. We're going over to elimination. It's a little bit longer. As defined in the glossary, elimination is the significant disagreement in discernible class characteristics and or individual characteristics. For the purpose of a fired cartridge, shotgun case, comparison, and elimination is most often based on observed difference in any class characteristics. So the class characteristics will be immediately different, so you will not do the comparison for individual characteristics because we know that it's different. However, an elimination based on individual characteristics is more complex. Conceptually, an elimination based on individual characteristics means that a firearm can be shown to have never been subjected to significant use or abuse over a period of time. The quantitative aspects of the striations produced on a fire cartridge and shotgun case should remain the same. The difference in these qualities indicates elimination. Elimination based on individual characteristics require the detailed knowledge of the history and the treatment of the firearm, as well as the documentation to support the theory or the history. It is the responsibility of the examiner to provide this historical document. The type of approach with caution. Many experienced examiners have never made such an elimination, and the protocols of many of the laboratories do not allow this. Topic marks alone are permitted by laboratory protocols. This process should be higher to strictly. Examiners may add to the report indicating that their conclusion was based on the condition of the firearm as received or the firearm. And I'm going to deal with each one of them, of all the court charges.
We can start after the next.
I think that's best since we
This is
didn't.
very important.
This is
part of
what
it.
we've been waiting for. Yes. And before we start, since we didn't actually adjourn for tea, anything else, we will adjourn for lunch, the lunch adjournment until 2 o'clock, and then we will proceed. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh,